pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Thank everybody for coming tonight. Start off with a public hearing on a proposal to enter into a development agreement with Dow Real Estate LLC and Convenient Subs Incorporated. Consider approval of a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a development agreement by and among the City of Bloomfield, Dow Real Estate LLC and Convenient Subs Incorporation. Have a motion to hold the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Has anybody got any comments from the public on that? Have you had anything written?
Nothing has been received.
Move to close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
You got anything, is there anything on it we need to discuss or?
I'll just review what we said last time. This is a 7-year agreement that will give 85% of the increment developed on this property for a 2-year period of time, followed by 65% of the increment for 3 years, and then ending with 35% of the increment for 2 years, for a total of 7 years, not to exceed $50,000. Expectation is, given what we got going on with real estate right now, the actual cost would be between $40,000 and $45,000. Less than what we normally do with other retail entities, given the fact that this is a low employment and really doesn't generate a whole lot more of sales tax based upon information we've got than what they did before, about a 10% increase.
Motion to approve the resolution?
Move to approve the resolution.
Second.
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Earl,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Public hearing to amend the Bloomfield Code of Ordinances 69.08, no parking zones. Consider approval of, okay, we just went too far. Need a motion to hold the public hearing. Move to hold public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anything from the public?
The zones are wanting to have no parking on, are the ones beside. I'm a little confused.
It's the street right here on the north side, on both sides, just from Columbia to Davis, just this one block area.
I don't think there's any reason to make it both sides closed. I've come by here several times since you had the discussion at your last meeting, and even tonight, there's 3 or 4 cars on the other side. I think it would, anytime that we had a lot of people at a council meeting, I believe it might hurt a little bit, the parking. I think it's fine the way it is. It says no parking on this side, pretty well all the way down. Easy to drive up and down that street. But the other street that you're talking about goes by Uncle Bob's. That thing's a mess. It needs one side, no parking anytime, I think. But to close this one both ways, I think it's a little too severe. It's just fine the way it is.
Any other public comments?
Chris, do we know, like, the width of the street out here compared to the other one? I know that's kind of
I
a odd
don't
question to
know.
ask, but I mean, are they,
Are they comparable? I don't know,
Yeah.
honestly. The right of ways are comparable, but I don't know if the streets themselves. If that's information you'd like, assuming this goes to a second reading, we can bring that to the next meeting if you'd like. I can't really tell by the picture here either.
Any other public comments? Sandy, have you had anything from anybody on that?
Nothing.
So have a motion to close the public hearing. We can close public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Consider approval of first reading of an ordinance to amend the Bloomfield Code of Ordinances 69.08 no parking zones by repealing number 45 and the following adopted in lieu of thereof 45 on both sides of Locust Street between Columbia and Davis Streets. Have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading.
Second.
Earl,
No.
Jack,
No.
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes. Didn't pass. Public comments?
I like to make
Did you do this one?
You still
You didn't do, I think you have,
You got a second?
yeah,
The first one didn't pass. You can't go to the.
but this is, no, this is a different street. This is the Washington
Number
Street
two.
one.
Oh, it's a different street?
Yeah.
Consider approval of first reading of an ordinance to amend the Bloomfield Code of Ordinances 69.08 no parking zones by adding number 48 on the east side of Washington Street between Weaver Road and Arkansas Avenue.
I've got some comments on this one because when you pull it up and you look at the east side of that street, you've got one driveway. On the east side is also where the sidewalks are. On the west side, if you count the business at the end, there's 5 driveways that people would have to park in between if people were going to park on that street. Which means then, if they're parked on that street, those 5 driveways have a more difficult time to back out into the street past those vehicles. And in talking to the residents, there's only one time that, the only time there's ever really a problem there is on card night. When it's held at the one residence. In talking to the people in that block. So, those are my thoughts.
So what, Earl, what he's saying, like,
Live alone, the other side of the street?
or change it
Well,
to no
you
parking
gotta-
on the other side?
I mean, if we were gonna make it parking on one side, or no parking on one side, it ought to be the west side that has the no parking.
Where did this come about at? Who brought this up? I mean,
I don't know. I didn't bring it up, so, wasn't my idea, so.
who was the request?
There was some citizens that brought it up that use that street.
Right.
That's just like this street out here. If you ever drive up and down this street during the day, it's a pain in the butt. Driving up and down here at 6 o'clock at night, it ain't. And that street's exactly the same way. They park the wrong direction, facing the wrong way. And the people that use that street, it's a problem for them. Because there's cars parked on both sides. And you gotta weave in and out of them. And it just seemed and the east side is the side that just seemed most logical to put the no parking.
There's a lot more room on the east side to park cars in a single row than there is on the west side.
So if we do-
Driveways.
So the ordinance states that the no parking would be on the east side, so everybody would park on the west side with the driveways.
Yeah, but people who are in those driveways, if they have to back out, then they've got an obstructed view to back out. If it's, if it's their own family vehicles that are parked on the street, I guess that's one thing, but
Well, that's 90% of what it is. Most of the time is their own vehicles that they can't get in their driveway.
But I've been up and down that street probably 24 times since the last meeting, at different times of the day and night, even at 3 a.m. to see what it was like. And I've yet to see more than 2 vehicles parked on the street since the last meeting.
Well, I've noticed that there is an issue with them being parked on both sides of the street. Now, which side of the street would be best? You see it both ways. If
Yeah, they
the
were parked
residents
on,
parking
there was
there,
one on one side and one on the other side, but they were,
if it's the residents parking there, then that way they don't have to cross the street if they're parking on the west side. Then I can't imagine why anybody else would be parking there other than the residents. But there would be a lot more parking on the east side of the street when you don't have all the driveways involved.
That's what I was looking at, was less driveways on the east side of the street.
But then you got more people
West.
crossing the street on foot.
Any other public comments on that ordinance?
And we hold this over for,
We're out of public comments.
we'd left public comments and whatnot.
I don't-
Table it if you want. There's no reason why I couldn't.
If you can pass it on one reading and not waive the others, you can just table it till the next meeting, postpone it to the next meeting.
I'll make a motion to postpone. We'll give the residents a chance to come in,
maybe
a little bit more information.
have somebody go out and ask the residents if they're, people are actually using it.
Table it till the next meeting?
Postpone.
A second.
Move to postpone. All in favor of postponing it?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comments. Consent agenda. Approval of city council minutes, June 7th, approval of library board minutes, May 8th, approval of library assistant report, June 12th. Approval of airport commission minutes, May 31st, and approval of airport commission minutes, June 28th.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Darren,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Earl,
Yes.
Consider and discuss with Jerry Whistler, Bloomfield Monument, ordinance 27-14-1 regarding placement of monuments at the IOOF cemetery.
Jerry isn't here, but he told me about a concern he has under the monuments. Right now, 27-14-1 says that there can only be one monument per burial space. And he has a family who wants who has already buried their son, his cremains, along with his dad, in one burial spot, but there's, according to this, the son can't have a stone. So Jerry said there's like 20 inches there where he could put his military marker if the city would allow 2 stones on one burial space. And that lot also has a military marker for the father. So there would be 2 military markers. That, the father's is at the foot. And so this would have 2 military markers plus a stone.
Plus a stone or plus an additional stone?
About 2 stones and 2 markers.
I think he was going to put the son's military marker on his stone. So it's basically just 2 stones and a separate military marker.
It says they can have a military marker plus a stone.
But the dad already has a military marker at the stone.
There isn't anything against burying 2 people in the same spot.
No. That's been done for years since I've been here. You can have a casket burial and then 3 cremains on top of that vault.
3.
Both stones are gonna be at one end, not
I'm sorry.
both stones are gonna be at the same end.
Yes, side by side.
There's some bronze markers fastened on the tombstones out there, and I couldn't tell you right now, but most of them I think are with the same person. It's just another memorial on that thing, but I can't tell you if there's any that's got 2 on it. There's one for somebody else, not on the same stone.
What's everybody's thoughts?
Hate to set a precedent, but I don't really have a problem with it.
I don't think
I'm assuming if you can put 3 cremated remains in the same space, they must not just have any marker for them.
Right.
There's been several people asked before and I've said, no, the ordinance doesn't allow that. And they've been fine with it.
There's some pretty big markers.
I guess
out there.
there's-
I don't know what would be the difference.
Yeah.
Giant marker.
I've
They're all
seen it
in-
done.
They're all in a row, so
Yeah.
it's not like it's more work. to
I've
try to
seen the original stone then be re-engraved with,
Add somebody to it.
add somebody to it. To me, that would be the better way to go. And add the marker to the stone somehow or whatever, but I,
So do we want to look into changing the ordinance, or do we want to just make a one-time exception?
you get just one time and be forced to do it again. If
Yeah.
it comes out of ordinance, so then it'll be however the vote comes out on the ordinance, I guess.
Right.
I wonder how other places have handled it. Can we
That's what, yeah, why don't we table
Do
this
some
and do some more
research.
research and see,
get,
And maybe we can ask Butch.
ask Butch and see what other places, how they've handled it? I think
might have
that's a
somebody
good
that's
idea.
active.
Yeah.
Which has been out of it for a while, that maybe
It's
change.
still the same.
I know where one is, I think it's in Missouri.
I move we table it and have more, get more research. We'll have
Get more information and maybe bring it back as an ordinance.
Yeah, that's
That's change versus.
He said it.
Earl.
Scott, Jax,
Yes.
Earl,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Consider presentation by French Reniker Associates regarding proposed water distribution and wastewater collection systems upgrades.
I'm Matt Walker with French Reniker. I've been working with Mark, Jeremy, Chris, and Danny on some upgrades or updates to your preliminary engineering reports. What a PER is it's an evaluation of your entire water and sewer systems, and it recommends phases for recommended improvements that can be done over time. We usually include between 4 and 10 phases, so that way we can update them in the future. That way, as money becomes available, you can go ahead and easily do that next step of the process. The other thing that a PER is necessary for is for a community development block grant application. CDBG is one of the main funding mechanisms for cities for wastewater and water main improvements. Some of the requirements you have to have is you have to have a low to moderate income greater than 51%. Bloomfield conducted an income study in 2016 that would verify that. So those are good for 3 years. So you guys, your survey will be good until the April 2019 CDBG application. They take applications 4 times a year, January, April, I believe July, and then October. The funding is based upon the population of the city. Bloomfield would be eligible for up to $600,000 in grant. And the next application deadline that we're hoping for would be October 1st. Just to kind of give you some previous background, within the last 10 years, Bloomfield has done 3 CDBG applications. There was a water and sewer joint application in 2009. 2013 was also a water and sewer combination project, and then 2015 was just a water project. Between those 3, the city was able to replace over 30,000 feet of 4, 6, 8, 10-inch water, line or rehabilitate not quite 10,000 feet of sewer, made 35 point repairs, and replaced or rehabbed 42 manholes. So some significant progress has been done in the last 10 years. This is just it's kind of hard to see, but all those colors are the areas of the different projects. So with the water main, everything is kind of really all over town. The sewer was this is rotated, the north is to the side, but it was kind of focused more on the east side, the north side, and then over there towards the west, that's over at Railroad and those areas. So with this 2018 application, I sat down with Jeremy and Jeremy and Mark and figured out where are your problem areas at. So for Mark, there are 6,600 feet of cast iron mains left in the system that need to be replaced. Cast iron is the ones that are really susceptible to breaks, and that's usually the ones that cause the problem areas. Jeremy, traditionally we've always done rehabilitation, which is lining or grouting of the mains. So what that does is that just either insert a sleeve inside the main, or you go through and grout the clay joints. For this project, Jeremy would like to focus on 2 key areas that are giving him problems, and he'd like to fully reconstruct them. So that would be replacing them with new pipe. It's all clay pipe, and he'd like to replace it with PVC. And the sewer would also replace 12 manholes and then 20 different connections along the line. So with this approach, again, it's kind of hard to see, but the solid lines towards the north and on east and down at the airport are where this phase of improvements would be. Those larger dashed lines would be a future phase when monies were available to the city, so maybe another CDBG application in 3 or 4 years. This is about 6,000 feet, and I believe it's on, we've got East Street, Deborah, Northland, Madison, and areas like that. And then this is also some, for the sewer, Jeremy really wants to focus on Jefferson Street, Jefferson over from West Street to Pine, and then north of Pine to the alley. That's about 1,200 feet. And then the other one is Parkview. There's this 6-inch line on Parkview that has, residents have come in before, that has clogged and backed up in the basements. And get that upgraded with the project as well. So the estimates we put together, the water improvements amounts to 639,000. The sewer is 753,000 for a total of not quite 1.4 million. For a CDBG application to be competitive, it really needs to be above 50% of grant versus local match. Right now, we're a little bit above that, but I think by the time we get into design, get some of that concept work out, it's gonna be closer to that 1.2 mark. So kind of the next steps is once we've got these reports updated, we need to submit them to the DNR and get the DNR to review and approve them. Another thing that has changed with the new CDBG process is they want the actual design of the main and the sewer done before the CDBG application. What they're looking for is shovel-ready projects, so as soon as you get awarded funds, you could begin using them rather than waiting, 6 months or 9 months to a year to get the design done, and then it just shows their budget is full with HUD and all the other things. They want to see that money being spent right away as soon as it's awarded. The other thing that needs to be done is an environmental review. That would be done by Area 15 Regional Planning. We've already talked with Brad Grief about that. Once the design is complete, then we submit to the IDNR again for construction permits. And then once that's all done, then we can prepare the application. The application would be due October 1st for the first one. And what they do is they take applications quarterly. So if you don't get the first one, then it can roll over into the next one and roll over into the next one. So I guess with that, that's kind of where we're at with some water and sewer improvements. So we just wanted to kind of present to council to see if you have any questions or anything. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good presentation. Consider and approve engineering services agreement with French Reniker Associates regarding proposed water distribution and wastewater collection systems upgrade.
This is something we budgeted for, right? So
Yeah, this
we
is,
plan this.
this is the kind of thing that we have been doing on a rather routine basis without a CIP.
Right.
This is something that we anticipated budgetary bills.
Move to approve the resolution with French Reniker and Associates.
Second.
Jack,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Earl,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Consider approval of a resolution authorizing the city of Bloomfield to enter into an agreement with GovDeals Inc., State of Iowa Action Services to allow online sales of surplus property. Contract MA 40-0014-00059, and also a list of items to sell.
Danny, this is your deal.
So I know I've been talking about Gov Deals, posting that stuff, kind of like a government version of eBay. So we have a resolution, we took a sample, put on there so we can use that. And then also a list of the equipment that's in your packets of what we had to sell. Basically, the equipment that's in there is excess, obsolete, old stuff that we pulled out of the warehouse, and we're all LED lightings, new stuff. This is all old high pressure sodium lights, mainly motion electrical stuff. The biggest ticket item on there is that bucket truck. I know that's been kind of going for the last 2 years, to sell, not sell. So that's the item we want to put on there and get that posted at least for the next month. And then I will reserve bid that for the amount and also have it, we'll get information out, marketing information, so anybody can bid on that. It'll be open. We'll put it on our billing information, also in the newspaper on how to bid. And then also, it'll be subject, I'll have it in prior to probably the August, was it 18th, somewhere in there, the council meeting at the end where sales subject to council approval. So you'll be able to approve the bids on that before it's actually sold.
Can you talk with them about taking the bids on the bucket truck?
Yeah, we was supposed to do this. Did that 6 or 8 months ago.
We had,
Never did happen.
we had all kinds of people come in at sporadic times expressing interest. So what we're looking here to do is level playing field.
This just puts it out there. Now it's, it's a process. They go through the payment process, whole 9 yards. On top of that, since we're involved in the state contract, once a year, at the end of the year, by August 18th, all sales will be by then, we actually receive an additional 1.25% rebate on the sales we've made. So we get additional credit on that too for anything you sell online. There's over 200 cities in Iowa as part of the state contract for the govdeals.com.
What about the generators?
You mean to sell them? I don't know, it's I guess I haven't been identified to sell, so whatever.
They're less used to us than the bucket truck.
All I've heard about since I've got here was the bucket truck, so I don't know anything about generators as far as selling them. I don't know if we repurchase them or whatever. I don't know, it's up to you guys and us.
You can add it to the list, or we could sell it under a different auction process. The same auction process and just a different.
Yeah, we can, there's anything that's out, anything you want to sell.
They just been sitting there for numerous years, not being used. I mean,
I just got them serviced. They're up and running now. So I put them on the cycle now. They'll be running and exercise monthly. So like our other engines. So
what can we use it for?
well, I mean, a fire station potentially for one of them. I mean, there's different, backups for a lot of stuff.
Power outage.
We've powered lift stations with them different times when the power was off for a significant period.
They've all got permanent generators on them now, don't they?
Yeah,
Yeah, they do
most,
now.
I think,
I think that's why they originally bought them.
yeah, that's what we originally had them for.
I think the last time they were used were down at the wastewater facility. I think was one of the last things up there. Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of just now starting going through this process of equipment, stuff. That was the first big ticket item that was identified. So yeah, there's more items we can talk about in the future, I guess. Trying to work on fleet management and usage.
Well, that's something you want to do?
Let's look at this, get away to disperse stuff is it.
I move to approve a resolution to join into the gov deals. That's the way to get rid of equipment.
Yeah.
Darren,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Earl,
Yes.
Consider recommendations from the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding home occupations.
So the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed last time we talked about home occupation ordinances, the council suggested that the Planning and Zoning Commission review them. So they met a week ago and we're fine with almost everything in the way the ordinance currently reads, except for there's one piece that talks about getting a certificate of compliance with regards to any home occupation. And right now it just talks about getting that before you start your home-based business. And their recommendation was that be an annual recertification for a $50 fee. So that's their recommendation to you, is that we change the ordinance to say that certificate of compliance needs to be annually and with a $50 price tag on it. And the reason for that is that we've had numerous home-based businesses, home-based occupations, and I don't know that we have any certificates of compliance on file. So this would be a way to make sure that we check in with them each year and make sure that they're still following the ordinances.
You're not saying they have to reapply every year for a home base, you just gotta make sure they're.
Yeah, they would still have to, the intent was that they would still have to fill out that, I mean, it might just be resubmitting the one that they did before, but there would be verification that they're following the ordinance and that certificate of compliance is issued each year. Yes.
So in other words, somebody can spend some money on putting in a home-based business this year, and you take it away from them next year?
Well, if it meets the ordinance, it would be fine, but if they didn't meet the ordinance requirements, then, yeah, they're not supposed to start without getting that certificate of compliance the first time anyway. So, it's their responsibility to be aware of what the ordinance requirements are and then apply for the certificate of compliance, and then the business can operate after that. This would just mean that it happens annually.
What about existing?
Well, this is one way that, so their recommendation is we make this effective starting January 1st. Make sure that we get lots of information out to the public about what the current ordinances are. And then and that gives everyone time to come within, make sure they're in compliance before January 1st when they're gonna have to apply for their annual certification.
What if they can't comply?
Then they have to shut down their business or relocate it. I'll tell you, it was
So we don't grandfather nothing like this?
that was their recommendation, is that, if they're not within compliance, then this is their opportunity to get within compliance prior to January 1st. And again, this is the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. Your action is your action, right? But their feeling was that there are ample opportunities for commercial properties, to rent commercial properties within the city. It's not like there's a shortage, and that if you can't operate the home-based business within the ordinances, then you shouldn't. That was the planning and zoning.
What are the exact ordinances pertaining to?
So the primary things are that it has to be operated only by the resident of the home. The business can't be operated out of an accessory building. You can't, the business can't change the outside appearance of your home. There's some special considerations with regard, and the only, except for a 1 by 2 square foot sign, that's allowed, not unlit sign to advertise the business. And the other primary thing is that there's a special thing for barbershops and beauty salons that can be up to a quarter of 25% of one floor of the home. So, for example, the way that the Planning and Zoning Commission read the ordinance, if you were repairing screens in your garage and it was an attached garage, then that's an acceptable home-based business as long as you don't have your supplies stacked up outside and you don't have equipment outside that you are using for the process, right? But if you were, I don't know, if you had a mulching supply business and you had piles of mulch outside and you were operating out of a detached garage, that would not comply with the ordinance. I mean, we can go through specific examples if you like, but.
Is solar considered a home-based business?
Putting solar to power your home, it doesn't fall under the home-based business. If you were selling solar out of your home, then yes,
If you're buying or if you're selling back to the city or trading for other, isn't that?
yeah, I don't, I've never seen that classified as a home-based business, but I mean, it's something we could take a look at.
You're creating more than you're using, is that not selling? So is that not a business?
It could be, I guess, if it's registered as a business. We currently permit solar arrays in the residential areas, so.
To me, that's commercial. If you're buying and selling electricity. We need to look at that also.
Any other questions on the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations?
We wanna act on this, or we wanna hold?
Well, the-
Comments, next meeting, or?
Next item is to set a public hearing to amend the ordinance.
Okay.
So set public hearing to amend Bloomfield Code of Ordinances by repealing 165.062J2G and replacing it with a certificate of compliance issued by the zoning enforcement officer shall be obtained before beginning any home occupation and shall be recertified each year prior to December 31st. The application fee and the annual recertification fee shall be $50. When we want to set the public hearing. Next meeting.
July 19.
Oh, you're getting an idea.
Wait for a motion.
Move if we set a public hearing
July 19th.
July 19th
Second.
on the subject of privately owned business, or
Home occupied,
Private
home
property.
occupation, business-based business.
Earl,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Jack,
Consider recommendations from the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding ordinance for private swimming pools and set public hearing.
So again, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed your recommendation, the current ordinances on pools. Our current ordinance, requires that all pools have a 6-foot fence and that, it implies that they should be in the backyard because it equates them to be an accessory building. Planning and Zoning Commission liked Fairfield's ordinance and recommends that you adopt that. It is a little less restrictive with regards to fencing. Says that a 4-foot fence is required on pools that are at between 18 and 4 inches, or 18 inches and 4 feet of water above ground, or excuse me, just 18 and 4 feet of water. And it explicitly says that a building permit is required and that the pool should be in the backyard.
If you don't have a backyard.
Yeah, if you don't, if it would be like corner line, it would be a side yard, but.
Is that consider grandfathering in anything, or is that? You're talking building.
That's another one they was
already out there.
So, you know, I would love to get some clarification on grandfathering from the attorney. How does that work?
I was talking to Sandy at the time.
So if we were to make an ordinance, so this ordinance would actually be less restrictive than our current ordinance because our current ordinance requires all pools to have fencing, right? And this one, it says you only have to have fencing, a 4-foot fence if it's between 18 inches and 4 feet. And then makes it clear that they have to be in the backyard. We currently have some pools, for example, that are not in the backyard. Would you have to grandfather them in, or could you just say that they all have to be in compliance with the new law?
Grandfather them in, or you'd have to say they have to be in compliance either way, I mean, that'd be up to them.
I don't know that we have any permanent pools in town, do we? Other than the city pool.
I don't know of any
It's not
in-ground pools.
Yeah, are you talking permanent structures or?
This was all pools, right? If anything that's between 18 inches and 48 inches with water depth.
If it's over?
If it's over, the idea was that that wall of the pool is high enough that you don't need the fence.
It's for all above ground.
Right, yeah, that's for above ground. Anything below ground would have to have. I think there's one pool in a building, but I don't know.
I don't think there are any of them being used.
It's not being used, it's been covered over, it's an outside pool.
Yeah.
So my only question is, I mean, a lot of these pools, you take them down, take them down, all. So when we say fence, I mean, is this like permanent?
Yeah, there's very
ground
specific,
fence?
it is, yeah, because it has to be able to have a gate that self-closes and, there's specifics on the fence about the size of the, the area of the hole that you can, so that a kid can't climb through the fence and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it would be a permanent fence and it would have to be sturdy.
If it's something you take down every year, you have to get a building permit every year to put it back up.
Fence?
So,
The pool. So it was, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's about the location of the pool. I don't recall.
more information and.
So the temporary pool shouldn't need a fence, it's Well, that's temporary. It's kind of where I'm leaning, that maybe we should throw something in the ordinance that says if the pool is standing between April 1st and end of September or something, I don't know what dates.
Right.
Then you require this. If you were gonna take it down,
So I think the discussion there is that whether the pool is permanent or temporary doesn't change its potential risk to someone falling in it and getting hurt, right?
I agree.
You're gonna drown more kids under 18 inches pool than you are any other pool. And that's pools don't have to be in fence.
So we can go look at some other ordinances if you'd like, other recommendations. This again is what the Planning and Zoning Commission thought was appropriate.
My recommendation is that you put this on for a public hearing to solicit input. And if you choose not to do it, then you would reject it and send it back to the planning commission. But in the meantime, you can do a little bit of research for the next time you actually deal with this issue. Put it on for the next meeting, and see what happens. There's nothing that compels you to vote for it if it doesn't meet your satisfaction after additional conversation and research has been done.
Have a motion to set the public hearing for July 19th.
I'll make a motion.
But that would be under these specific recommendations, right?
Yeah, it'll be under what they recommend, and if we don't like the recommendations, then we don't pass them.
Send us the list of the recommendations.
I will.
Anybody second that?
Yes. I make a motion.
Second.
I'm not sure I want to go to that ordinance now.
Jack,
Yes.
Earl,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
Sure.
Consider and discuss continuation of Code Red services.
Well, this one is evolving from staff, in a general sense. I'm glad the chief is here. We have a contract, to continue Code Red services. Question is with all the new technologies that we have, plus the fact that Code Red services are really not utilized by all of our functions. I mean, we're out of sync with county, correct, chief, on Code Red?
Right, they don't use it, we just do.
So the question is this a valuable service when it is so limited in its approach? I mean, we have different ways of making these communications.
Don't they pay part of it?
Yes.
no,
Don't they
not
pay
anymore.
1,200?
Don't pay
Not anymore.
I think
gave it
they
up.
are.
No.
No, we pay for it all.
We pay for
They
it.
used to pay for it, and we used it, but I think a year or two ago, they gave it up, and we pay the whole thing now.
I thought at one of the public safety meetings that they agreed to still pay for
I
it.
think it was an issue like a year or two ago, and then they just stopped paying for it.
You got a better,
Well, I mean, it's coming in handy, I mean, for different city-centric projects. And then when we have maybe, doesn't happen often, but a missing kid, and we know necessarily it's not a statewide thing, then if we can keep it in,
You got Amber Alerts for missing kids.
we do.
That's statewide.
That's statewide, that's calling out everybody, but for kids we just think are in the area, we use that.
The 2 times that I remember using it for missing kids in town, the kids were found before the calls even got out.
And what this really is, what we're raising here, I mean, if you want to continue, it's fine, but there's a question about its cost effectiveness. And a lot of this is really based upon the fact that with internet technologies, cell phone technologies, this stuff really, this code red system was kind of evolved before those kind of technologies were commonly used. We're raising it from a cost-effective standpoint.
What all do they do? I mean, I understand the code red.
Anytime there's,
Oh, like when they purge the gas plant, they have every 3 months or something, they purge the gas plant, they'll send out a code red. So if you live in that part of town and you smell gas, you're not to be alarmed because it's just, that's what it is. Or if they have a major gas leak or power lines down, or they've used it. We used it this winter one time on the square for people to move their vehicles, to move for snow removal.
How many people are registered for it?
it's really hard to tell because it goes by your address. So some people, like if I live here and register my phone with this address and I move across town, I'm still gonna get calls for both places. There's no way to take your old address off. Considering the number of calls that were made last fiscal year, we're paying $613 per minute, or per call, I should say, per call.
Cell phones kind of negate the whole idea.
And if it's not cost effective.
I mean, do we use it like we should? That's another, I mean, is there times we should use it, we don't? I'm not being for it or against it, I'm just asking questions.
Chief, when we did the code red for the snow removal thing, we didn't get a big response, did we?
I don't remember, I don't think much of one.
And this is the voluntary SMAC, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the only question is, you do away with it and you have a big snow removal, who's going to contact?
Oh, well, we would be on the internet, we would be on cable TV, we would be on the radio.
They have to register for it, so you're not necessarily getting them anyway.
And if you're not registered,
It's like you gotta sign up for cable TV too.
you could be on, you put it on Facebook and it'll get out there a lot quicker.
Well, I mean, I agree that.
Write a parking ticket, that'll get everybody. Everybody on the square is grandfathered in to park wherever they want.
Do you have a preference?
I don't, the main thing we used it for is like city projects and stuff, the missing kid thing is pretty far and huge. But I hate, if we don't have it, we'll need
If we do a
it.
city project, it would be just as effective, if not more effective, to do door hangers.
You could probably drive down the street on a loudspeaker and get a better response.
That guy's still around?
Sold his equipment.
We understand that this is a vendor that sold this thing to begin with, from the standpoint of, oh, we could provide all those communications, but times have changed.
Run the Express.
Yeah, the Facebook's a faster communication than cell phones.
Well, I guess if we don't use it, I guess I don't see the reason why we can't get rid of it. It's not like we can't never bring it back if we need it.
And it's almost $7,000 a year.
And if 6 months down the road, we decide that
Get rid of that.
we could utilize it for something better, or if we need it for a year, if we're doing a big project, and it's the best way, we can always buy it again.
Move to discontinue code red service.
Jack?
Yes.
Earl?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Darren?
Yes.
approve claims as presented.
Parks and Recreation Services.
Oh, discuss delivery of parks and recreation services.
Danny and I met with Taylor last week, as I had indicated that we would be doing. Robbie showed up as well as did Earl and John. We talked about the history of how Park and Recreation Services have come together. We talked about the Mutual Center and its relationship and the Mutual Center Board. We have 3 different Park and Rec entities here. Probably a little bit too much. I've talked informally with Ron Bright, who is the county representative of the Mutual Center. One of the things about the Mutual Center to understand here is that they had a big endowment to do capital improvement work on it over time. It's been 20 years since it was formed. What was initially more than $1 million of fundraising that went not only to the initial contract of construction, but also a kitty to do improvements. That number is now down to $35,000. They had about $100,000 until recently when they fixed the roof. So there's not much money left in the kitty, and the real question is what happens after that money runs out? Whose responsibility is this? Now, that's one issue. Another issue is that the Mutual Center has, they collect fees. Those fees go into an operations account. Talking about $40,000 that's in the balance, kind of just rotates. So the fact of the matter is that it is really a small operation cost for a board that oversees a portion of this, and in its relationship to other Parks and Rec functions becomes under the responsibility of one person, one department sort of. The other question is what is the Park and Rec Board's function in relationship to Mutual Center, in relationship to all this other stuff going on with the Park and Rec function. We also have the Conservation District that oversees a portion of the green space that is in this county. I shouldn't say Conservation District, what is it, Chris?
Conservation Board.
Conservation Board. Conservation Board, for instance, oversees, is this my understanding, or is it the county oversees all the other parks in the county except for ours?
I believe the Conservation Board oversees other city parks, Perryville and Pulaski.
Right. I'm not saying that we should get rid of our Park and Rec function. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I'm saying that there ought to be a discussion here, perhaps on a countywide basis, with all the players, as to see if there's a better way that we could deliver Park and Rec services here, because we have people being pulled in a lot of different directions. Internally, we have issues as far as it relates to who's got responsibilities for the maintenance. Is that a Park and Rec Board directive, or is that a city directive? Is the Park and Rec Board function, while it might be stipulated in some ordinance, is it really different in practice than what has been done for a long time? All I'm putting out there is that I think that we ought to have some sort of at least an intergovernmental discussion about this from the standpoint of what's going to happen. I think the Mutual Center is one aspect of this, but the larger concern here is if we look at, for instance, Lake Fisher, the west side of Lake Fisher, while it's owned by the city, is not managed by the city, technically. It's managed by the Conservation Board. Lake Fisher's not even in the city limits. I don't know if that means anything, even though it's city owned. Does the Park and Rec Board really have a whole lot to do with overseeing programming, which may very well be a very appropriate thing for them to do, but then how does that relate to the programming of Mutual Center? There's a lot of government here for what would be considered a rather common function that you would see with a lot of different things. You have, if you will, one boss here, it might be easier, or if you could segregate the programming from the maintenance, who's responsible for the maintenance versus the programming. I think it's time that we, try to have a new understanding about this. Earl and John, gave us the history in this meeting about how all of the things have evolved into who's doing what and how it was done and under which person it was done. And with whoever was the park and rec director, it seemed like who was responsible for things changed from person to person. It changed from year to year, only because this person had a focus and interest in this portion of the delivery of the service. Realistically, I think everybody realizes that we need to have a clearer understanding about lines of authority and who has responsibilities of overseeing the particular concerns of the park and rec function. Again, my recommendation is that we enlist at least to start with an intergovernmental discussion about just these things. We had one internally. It might be appropriate to do this with other entities that have a position in these concerns. The mutual center is, the mutual board is a representative of the city, a representative of the county, and a third person who is a representative of the banking community who oversees the financing. There's not much finances to oversee, and quite frankly, the city has the same capabilities. I'm not saying that we're stepping up and volunteering for that, but the fact of the matter is that running these different kinds of operations are essentially the same thing. I mean, you could all see integrative, what kind of programming that you'd have with the mutual center. For instance, the kids that are at the mutual center in the morning are in the gym, and in the afternoon they're at the pool. Two completely different functions as far as how those services are delivered. There's a lot of bureaucracy here that's not necessary.
I would like to be informed of that meeting.
I'm asking for to set up.
Another meeting you had,
I did. I told you at the last council meeting.
not that you was meeting with them.
We-
When Earl and John was there,
They showed up.
they didn't know about it, they just showed up.
I had the same notice you had.
I said that there was a meeting that we were going to have at 1:30 on Monday at a council meeting. And
I just chose to be there.
I had no expectation of that even being.
So you're thinking that, or recommending that there's like one governing body for it and then everybody involved kind of puts in their share?
Well, if that's the case, I'm out here asking these questions right now. I don't have specific answers because I don't think that enough input has been developed. I mean, I'm making this report based upon really an internal meeting that is begging the question on a larger basis. I think that if we talk about programming, for instance, is the programming from the mutual center something that is distinct and different from programming that they have for swim programs with the same kids in the afternoon? I think that stuff probably should be commingled. It is being done functionally, but it is being overseen by two different entities and potentially a third. I think that that's unnecessary. I mean, it really, in my mind, in some respects, calls the question just exactly what the mutual center board is all about these days. I mean, if in fact they're not going to have a whole lot of financial impact anymore because the money's gone, that begs a bigger question to me, and that is does the city automatically acquire those responsibilities? I mean, is there, for instance, for lack of a better term, a park and rec board function that could be on a countywide basis?
Is the mutual center a city property or is it still a entity of its own, or how does that work anymore?
Is a mutual center is an independent.
There's a nonprofit that owns the mutual center, and
we
it's
don't own it.
operated through a 2080 agreement between the county and the city and the
mutual assent board. I understand.
See, 3 entities right there.
Like you said, it's a discussion to be had before you.
I think probably how you start this out with is it's a city-county sit-down, because, as I've said before, the mutual center board is comprised of somebody from the city, somebody from the county, and a financial manager who is determined by the other 2 members. And I think that there's some caveat that if they can't agree on that, then somebody else makes the decision. I mean, it's kind of convoluted for what we're trying to do here, and that's provide a service to the community.
Always talking about what mutual centers come about from an endowment. So when that endowment runs out of money,
Well, technically oversees some operations, but, you know, it's.
that's what you said, you have to close the endowment.
Well, sure, I understand that. But I mean, if in fact we're talking about the endowment process, that day's coming pretty quick. You know, $35,000 doesn't buy you much more. I mean, for instance, the maintenance of the building right now is actually through the mutual center board. But I've gotten complaints about the maintenance of the building. What's the city gonna do about that? Well, it's perceived to be the city's responsibility, but, you know, can we coordinate that activity much more with people that have those responsibilities in a general sense from the city? I can't hear what you're saying, so I don't know.
Well, I just wondered, you know, who owns it after the endowment is closed? You said the
I would-
nonprofit does. so
I would
they
assume the nonprofit has it, and the question is whether the nonprofit is still going to be wanting to do it. I mean, you have a board.
And the nonprofit is the mutual center board.
Right. One question, and it's not for me to say, but one question is that endowment's gone, what's this board gonna do?
What do they have? Like you said, there's a discussion to be had.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I have an answer. I think that the whole situation begs a larger question.
Probably better sooner than later. Have a plan before the endowment expires.
Again, you know, if you wanted to look at the service provision, you know, is it isolated to just the city? Are some of the city recreational services just isolated, our users just isolated to the city? You know, you got ball programs and ball diamonds and all that kind of stuff. Not all them kids are city residents. You know, there's a jurisdictional issue in that regard. Does this look like a countywide program? Could it be better? Could it be a more improved service if in fact it were a countywide program? We really started to reach out to those folks. Personally, I don't have pride of ownership here. If it were me, I would look at this from the standpoint of seeing that how all-encompassing you can be and simultaneously how can you get more people to participate in providing the service from the standpoint of not only governmental entity and income, but also from the standpoint of the citizens who could participate and use this service. That's not to say that, for instance, the city couldn't operate it, but then you would probably look at a 2080 agreement a little bit differently with the county or with the conservation district or, you know, whatever.
So you're looking for direction to proceed with
The conversation.
conversation. I'd be on board.
Was that a motion?
That's what it takes. Oh, it was just direction, not motion.
Well, I agree with you, Darren, that we probably need to have those discussions now than, you know, 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line when the money's gone.
Right.
And we should be planning ahead.
Right. have a plan for where to come.
I mean, it's not to say that the mutual center doesn't deliver income, but they do it for operations, it's just a rotating thing. It becomes, if you look at their minutes, you look at their meetings, it's pretty
Well, it's
repetitive.
always been a confusing setup of, it's there, but who runs it, who maintains it, so clarity is required.
And sometimes these things just run their course too. I mean, it's not to say that whatever you have set up is some sort of entity you can't change. Because conditions have changed, circumstances have changed. My recommendation would be is that we open some sort of formal discussion with the county to start with. Given particularly the fact that 2 of the 3 members of the mutual center board come from the city and county. But that's all I'm looking for is just to start engaging in this discussion. It's not gonna happen overnight, but at the same time, I think it could have a dramatic impact on how we deliver this service and whether we should deliver this service.
Do we need to have a special meeting then with them and us, the council and the supervisors to?
Well, probably we do. I could probably talk with the county and Rick Lynch to see what their processes are for having a joint meeting of this sort. It may very well be that we could just meet with the one supervisor that's on the mutual center board and have this discussion and take it to them. A lot of this might very well be based upon what the county wants to do and how they want to address it too. But I'll go, I can,
meeting, I mean, we can all be.
yeah, I mean, we could. There's no question you can't.
Save a lot of back and forth if everybody was there and could ask questions and
Right.
get their thoughts out.
I have, so
How
how
are
are
you
you
want
going to,
everybody's thoughts, not one person's?
yeah.
Everything gets relayed the way it was presented.
I think, I mean, the mayor has tasked me to start attending county board meetings, and this is probably something I can raise at the next county board meeting, saying, look, we would like to do this. Okay.
I think it's something that we need to do in a special meeting,
Yeah.
because I mean, it could take a while.
If your direction is given, then what I'll do is go to the county board and see what we can do to set it.
And we probably better back it up to the first part of August sometime. Sure. We got fair,
Yeah. I understand.
all the little county, the other little towns got stuff, so, I mean, not that we need to put it off, but to get everybody there, I think our best bet would be to wait a couple weeks anyhow. We got the direction for that. Now we can approve the claims as presented.
Okay.
Do you need a motion for that?
It's up to you.
No, I think we kind of agree
Are you
and
guys looking for
Go for it.
giving direction for it.
Right, that's fine.
I just get something set up,
Okay.
bring it to probably to the next meeting and then we can do the motions. Approved claims as presented. Anybody got any questions on? What's the Piper Auto Salvage reimbursement for parts?
For the trench drain we put down at Parkview, that's the project we did down there, so he actually bought some of the parts that we didn't have enough on hand, so he bought them instead of us, so we said reimbursement for those. I bought some of it and he bought the other part.
Did we not have them?
No, we didn't have enough, so pieces, and also the drain changed, we bought sloping drain, we ended up going with a flat, straight drain, it tapered, instead of being a tapered, the flat, so, they needed to get it done and poured, so they went and bought it, and we reimbursed them and took some parts back. So, it's just a timing issue.
Are we about done with that sewer building?
We're-
I mean, there's $34,000 a month extra on here that just every month.
Lighting and electricity, the heat pump install and, the what?
Lot?
The lock, yeah, finishing that, so we're almost.
Was none of that,
85%.
any of the previous stuff that we approved?
other than you to recognize it was coming.
Right. It's part of the whole concept plan, but just.
That building ended up costing 3 times the original amount.
But you know what happened here is that we kind of order our own general and kind of added on.
Yeah.
We did do some
We tried to
good improvements to it, but it just seems like we're getting kind of nickel and dime here.
Well, we tried to use most of it in the last year, so this is the new year for this part, so I'm trying to get her wrapped up, trust me. It's supposed to be a little bit. Yeah.
It was part of the understanding that we did when we put the budget together too, is that some of these last things would come out of this year's budget. As opposed to being an add-on, they take it just out of some of the regular line items that really didn't change from last year to this year.
You got any more questions on the claims?
On the NPA computers, we got a maintenance contract with them, is that annual contract? Shredder and Menards.
Maintenance contract that says,
Like an annual contract.
We do. We need to go back out for bid. We haven't gone to bid for that for a while, and we haven't re-signed. We've just been continuing on the old contract for about 6 months. We need to go out to bid, and we told them we're gonna go out to bid. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Do they do anything?
Do they do anything? When we call them, they do. Yeah, when we post stuff to the website or. But it's time to go out for a bid.
they've been getting a pretty good deal, I
Yeah.
think. So what's the Charles Anthony Sparger? Is that another, what's that contract for?
He operates the airport.
Okay. Airport, man, that's what the AP stands for, airport.
I'll make a motion to approve claims.
Second.
Earl,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Public comments?
I have one.
Yeah.
I think we should profoundly thank the people that are involved in Hairy Nation Days, parade yesterday, and the rodeo. My wife and I participated in several things during Hairy Nation Days. Very good crowd in the evening, pretty well attended. And the parade yesterday, the participants should really be thanked because they were not working under very favorable conditions, pretty warm out there on that street. And then we had a good crowd at the rodeo last night, good fireworks display. So anybody had anything to do with those events, they deserve a thank you.
I would agree.
Thanks for your compliments. It was hot yesterday during the parade. Anybody else have any public comments? Gary, you got anything to report?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. First of all, something that's actually, I think, kind of significant to our community is just now starting to come out. It was at the last county board meeting. There was a presentation by Trade Winds Inc. I know some people are aware of this generally, but this thing is kicking into the next year, and that is that there's serious consideration and research being done to establish a wind farm in the southwest corner of the county. What they're looking to do is site 300 megawatts of wind generation in an area that goes approximately from 202 east to 63 and south of Route 2 into down to about Lancaster in Missouri. They have leased up 60,000 acres, and they're looking to lease up another 10,000. It's not that they're going to actually utilize all of that. They're probably going to utilize about a third of that. But the fact is that they are very serious about creating a wind farm comparable in size to the one that's being done in Schuyler County right now. They've got 139 turbines, I believe, that are going to be put in Schuyler County. they're looking at probably somewhere between 100 and 150 here based upon the size. One of the things that we learned at the county board meeting is that Trade Winds is looking at various sizes of wind turbines to match the wind that's out there. The technology's evolved to the point where you size these things based upon what kind of winds that's available. And they've got a couple of test towers up right now doing this research. Their intent is to really get this thing going because tax credits for these efforts end the end of 2019. They stated at the county board meeting that they would like to get started in construction as early as this year. That assumes that all of the research and all their data collections come to fruition, that it makes the project feasible. The project is considered to be feasible because there is a new, what do we call it, Chris?
It's a high voltage transmission.
High voltage transmission line that is going to extend from the power plant in Chillicothe all the way down to Columbia, Missouri. It's called the Mark Twain line. That is spawning this whole idea of hooking on and putting more power into that distribution of power. I think that it's indicative of the trends that we see going on throughout the Midwest, at least. Whether we know it or not, over the last 10 years, there's been a tremendous transfer of how we do power generation toward wind. You were at a conference recently that you were with people from
Alliant, Mid-American, and the MISO network.
And was it Mid-American saying that they were going to be 100%?
By 2021, the MISO network expects that if projects that are currently in queue get finished, that between wind and solar, there'll be a 40% of energy consumed will be produced under those sources.
That's a far cry from where we were before, and that it's just a larger indication that wind and solar are obviously the technology that's evolved into a very basic form of implementation. Anyway, that's something to be aware of because that's going to change how power is done around here to some degree. We do not know. This isn't going to impact us locally per se. It's not going to impact the co-op, mainly because the power gets sold to the transmission people, not to effectively distributors or the users. But it will add to power that's being generated, whether this power is sold through transmission lines that ultimately wind up into our main power source as far as the co-op is concerned. And where this project is located, whether it's in Iowa or in Missouri, may very well be dependent upon the preferences of the people that actually buy power through these transmission lines. They might say, well, we're a Missouri company, we want it in Missouri. It might be that simple.
The way I understood it was these windmills were gonna be along the transmission line that runs from Columbia to Chillicothe. Because putting a windmill anywhere in the county, getting the power to that transmission line was expensive. So the only place you're gonna see is along the transmission line.
That's right. And that's why this area is being selected, because this Mark Twain line would go through that area. I mean, they're not talking about large expanses here, and it wouldn't come to us directly. It would go into these larger power users and power generators. But it is an indicator of how we're changing doing power. Or the whole idea of fossil fuels is, again, being diminished because there's different technologies that are apparently far more cost effective, because these people wouldn't be doing these things if it weren't cost effective.
Well, they're cost effective because they're getting government subsidies.
Well, I think that you could probably say the same thing happened with nuclear and with coal burners back in the day too. At any rate, that's something to be cognizant of just on a regional basis for us. The second thing is that I have contacted with 3 different engineering firms that are willing to do the second, if you will, a second opinion on streetscape. I don't know how you guys want to handle this from the standpoint of, do you want to interview these firms? Do you want to give them the sensitivities of this issue? I don't know what you want to go for the next step here. They're certainly willing to evaluate the plan. If you wanted to go farther, we could have that discussion with them. But the fact is that I frankly contacted the 3 finalist firms that we had for the sewage treatment plant. All 3 of them were very interested in providing this kind of service. And the cost is, generally speaking, about $4,000 or $5,000. If you want more, then we would have to discuss more. But my question to the council is what do you want me to do here? You want just a second opinion? If you want a second opinion, do you want me to make the selection, or do you want to be participating in this? I have no pride of ownership in this thing. If you want me to do it, I'll do it. But if not, I certainly would take input as to how you want to go about it.
Does any of the 3, does any of them stand out over the other one as far as anything that?
Depends on what your criteria is. I got one that actually, they do streetscape things, but they emphasize more the infrastructure concerns as opposed to the aesthetic. I think that all of them recognize that the project that we've been talking about actually does have a significant component, a primary component of sidewalk, streets, and stormwater management. And I think that, again, if we want to talk about the value of what we have versus the value of what could be achieved in the future, that's the emphasis that you want. I see problems that we have with streetscape as it is right now. Not that it actually exists, but we all know the difference between the crowns and the sidewalks being like this. That's
an engineering.
Well, that is an engineering issue.
Engineering issue, and as far as that ordinance about the sidewalks and the crown of the streets, I'll guarantee you it's nowhere in near spec now.
I know it's not. Well, I mean, I don't know about,
The street has been overlaid so many times.
that's the problem. It should have not been overlaid so many times.
So
I think that if we look at foundations, from my perspective, and I know that everybody in this town is a civil engineer. And I'm going to give you my civil engineering observation. There's a reason why those 2 buildings are in trouble. And a lot of it has to do with the terrain. Franklin Street and Jefferson Street are pretty flat if you look at their backyards versus their front yards. But if you look where the buildings are failing and where there's been repairs made on Madison Street, you realize that there is a huge drop off and that those foundations are far more susceptible to failure. We had a guy that came in our offices and said, you know what, I'm against streetscape, always been against streetscape, but the moistures that you see going into these foundations is causing the failures of these foundations. Who's responsible for the moistures? How do you fix that problem? It's not just the fact that they're old. We have sidewalks that fail. There's no question about it. We have sidewalks that aren't failing. Where are the more severe problems? I don't know if it's relational, other than the fact that we have foundations that are in trouble. Priesters fixed the foundation. Buildings farther to the south on that block are in trouble. We certainly know that. So the fact of the matter is maybe we ought to talk about that from an engineering standpoint. That's my civil engineering observation. That I purport as my expertise, like everybody else's.
Well, obviously, nobody would build a building with foundations that's under those buildings now.
Or if they did, they'd certainly build the foundations differently.
Exactly. I mean, you're not gonna build a foundation on what those will build on. And the engineer even said the biggest problem was water infiltrating down the walls.
Right.
And eroding
Right.
foundations.
So how do you fix that? I think the question, I mean, to me, those are some of the questions that whether you even evaluate this engineering plan or not, that CDF put together. The larger question is perhaps from this discussion, what should we do and maybe what should we prioritize?
Well, I think what we ought to do is, we need a whole plan as far as what is gonna be sidewalks, curbs, and the streets. But I would prefer to, for right now, do the curbs and the sidewalks in such a way that we can do the streets later. The streets themselves aren't in that bad of shape, other than the curb and the sidewalk, about a foot out, 2 foot out from the curb. I don't know, can that be done, man?
It would be, it depends on what you wanna do. Just because of ADA requirements, you're gonna have to redo those sidewalks quite, you know what I mean? You're gonna have to bring the slope up. They are nowhere close to being 1.5%.
You bring
So-
the slope up, then you got issues about the door fronts.
So that's the problem. You've gotta bring your slopes to match your door fronts, but then you've also, what you're trying to do is tie it into your existing parking, which gets to be a challenge, because you bring things up a couple, say 6 inches. What are you gonna have, a 12-inch curb? So I think what you guys need to do is you decide what you want to go out there. Do you want to just do the sidewalks and the curb and gutter? Because that's a totally different design than redoing the whole, because if you're gonna redo the whole thing, you're gonna regrade, you're gonna relay everything out, so all that water drains away from you. But if you're gonna do that, you have to do the whole project. You can't piecemeal things together just because the elevation is gonna be so drastic.
And then-
Talk about Mount Pleasant, talk about Mount Pleasant.
So one thing Mount Pleasant did is, if you've been there recently, they actually just did it this summer. They have, I think, 10 to 12 foot sidewalk in front of the buildings. So what they did is they put a 5 foot ADA compliant sidewalk that ran the face of the buildings. So you can go down at 5% and still be compliant. And then for that next 5 foot to the curb and gutter section, that was variable to match whatever grades they needed to get their curb and gutter to work right. So they did that. They have they like colored concrete. So that they have that as colored, so it's a visual. This isn't really the sidewalk. So some of it might be 1%, some of it might be 12%. So it just fluctuates up and down, and it's severe. It's not severe enough that you can't walk on it, so most people just walk right onto it. But the ADA path is up against the building front.
Right.
And they actually did do their whole, redid the whole streets with it, but that was their way of making the ADA compliant with the variable building fronts, just because you're gonna have different elevations. But,
That's an ADA issue.
Yes.
That's a huge ADA issue.
but I don't think they had pole shoots issues. They didn't because they got it done way too fast. So, I mean, that's the other side thing that you're gonna have to address if you're gonna redo, obviously the sidewalks, because the coal chutes are a huge issue.
We're probably gonna have to address stormwater management to some degree.
Absolutely,
Not,
absolutely.
does that mean that we really redo it? I mean, that's what this CDF plan was all about. A reason why you bring in an engineering firm to take a look at this thing. But the fact of the matter is that componentizing this, as Matt says, might be very problematic. I'm putting it out there.
That's why I said we wanted to have it evaluated, so.
How do you want me to just pick one or what?
I'd probably pick the one that had the more infrastructure background.
They all do. Shy Hatterley, they do the school, they do all kinds of stuff. Easter and Kim and HR Green, they all do this stuff.
A big fan of Shy Hatterley.
You want me to bring Green in? They're here already for the sewer plant.
You say some mileage.
Oh, in candor, it might be somebody from a different office in Iowa as opposed to the sewer guys, but.
That's right.
All right, I'll set up a contract and bring that to you at the next council meeting.
That all you got?
That's enough.
Danny?
So a couple things, we're still finishing up on tree trimming, getting ready for the pole replacement. Just want to remind everybody, tree trimming is just primary lines only, so our crew will get secondary lines to the houses. I know we've had a lot of people call on because all they said they left their lines close to the house, but that's where we only contracted them to do primary lines, so we'll do the secondary lines. We're down to 1-lane roads on Railroad, 500 block of Railroad, and then over by the high school, we'll start patching those streets. So for a couple of weeks, we'll be down 1 lane, getting those fixed. Placing poles on the fairgrounds, getting ready to run some 2-phase line. We'll do that after rodeo's gone, so we'll get ready to prep for the fair, run some more power out there for the campgrounds. And then southeast water main break, we're working on that, starting to talk with South Fork. They're gonna be shut down during the fair, so we're gonna probably work with them on their conjunction shutdown to get that main fix repaired. And the last thing, I have a meeting Monday with the county engineer to go over our engineer estimates for the bridge culvert project, so we can go on Monday.
Since we waited 3 months from when that broke, we maybe should have put that back out for bid instead of using that emergency bid. We maybe could have got it done quite a bit cheaper.
So I don't know, that's what, I just went with that and what we had, so.
I thought it was gonna be quicker.
Yeah, we maybe should pull the trigger on that one real quick. But Chris?
Yeah, I don't have a lot tonight. Just want to thank you all for the participation Monday night on the energy planning process. And I think based on some of the questions that I heard that night from y'all, I think it might be beneficial to, one, have a representative from Iowa Wind and Solar, now Simple Ray, come in and talk to you directly about the operation of the solar field. I think that way you can, I mean, since they own it and will be operating it, I think it makes sense for some of those questions to come directly to them. And two, I think it would also be beneficial to maybe meet with Cadmus and talk about contracts, energy contracts and that kind of thing. I know we're a ways out from negotiating a contract with SIEC, but it's probably good to begin having that conversation and thinking about it, talking about what those rates and things are, if you're open to that. And then finally, I wanted to mention that Danny and I will be interviewing for assistants tomorrow, so hopefully we'll have someone selected soon. Thanks.
I don't have a lot other than, we had a decent 4th of July, very few complaints. I don't think anybody got hurt too bad, so.
Hurt too bad.
Yeah,
Did people get hurt?
well, not too, no.
Hell, they did. Did you find a car seat?
We did, we found a car thief. So. The Facebook works out very well.
Yeah, that's. Let's see, anybody got any updates on the council from any meetings they was at?
Library meeting, Jack?
Let's see, when's it? It's Monday night, first Monday every month it is. That's already passed, so it must be the second.
Had a DC meeting, and I meant to bring the director's report, and I forgot. They, one of the big things was the fiberglass factory going again with, Ron Simmons and his sons.
We can bring it next 2 weeks. Anybody else got anything? I don't have anything. So we got a closed session pursuant to Iowa Code 20.173, negotiating session strategy meetings of public employee or employee organizations, mediation, and the deliberative process of arbitrators shall be exempt from the provisions of chapter 21.
Oh, this won't be.
We need to do a motion to enter into that closed session.
Move to go into closed session.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll stay in here and no.
Yes, thank you.
Uh-oh.
Eventually.
Yep, yes.
If you're gonna speak here, I need to shut down the video. If you're going into the other room, I was gonna leave the video running until you came back.
We'll check out, just go ahead.
She'll have to do another tape for that closed session, or
Do
another,
I stop this one?
We'll just adjourn.
Yeah, just stop it.
and then she'll reopen it.